If you've watched my channel, you know that the watches I wear are often priced in the tens of thousands or much more. It may come as a surprise then that one of my favorite watch releases of 2023 is a watch that costs less than 3,000 Sing dollars with tax. This is the Christopher Ward 12 in titanium, and here's why it's hands down one of the best watches of the year. Before we start, please consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Thank you and enjoy the video. The 12 is a watch that I've actually been eyeing ever since it was released. Even though I'm lucky to have access to a lot of amazing watches, they're generally somewhat fragile due to the complication or too expensive to risk breaking. I wanted an affordable bracelet watch that I could comfortably wear to the beach or into a meeting without drawing attention. What I really hesitated on was the looks, especially the dial design and the usage of the Christopher Ward logos. I didn't want to waste $3,000 on something that may be cheap and tacky in person. However, I'm glad to report that after seeing the watch and wearing it for a few days, that couldn't be further from the truth. In person, the 12 Titanium is a very handsome watch. It comes in two dial colors that seem to be named by ChatGPT, Astral Blue and Nebula Purple. Both have a nice color gradient that gets darker towards the edges, similar to watches like the Moses Streamliner or Patek Nautilus. It may be shocking, but as someone who daily wore a 5711 steel for 8 years, I would prefer the dial of the 12. Aside from fresher colors, the three-dimensional effect plays well with light and is pleasing to the eyes. More importantly, the date window is incorporated very well, with a background that matches the dial color. This is something that watches that cost over 10 times more can't seem to get right, with the VC Overseas and 5711 being key examples. The 12 places the color match date window at 6 o'clock, ensuring that it doesn't disrupt the symmetry of the dial. As for hands and hour markers, they are faceted and look good. Naturally, we aren't getting gold hour markers or fine finishing as you do with some high horology sport watches, but the end result looks solid and still punches far above the price tag. Another aspect of the 12 that is very impressive is the case and bracelet. Starting with the case, the watch is 9mm thick but feels much thinner in person due to how it's designed. This is something that brands like Patek do well, where the thickness is hidden by having a thin middle section with added thickness on the top and bottom. The effect is complemented by a sharp 12-sided outer bezel, which is kind of similar to watches like the GP Laureato. Ultimately, the end result is that the watch looks and wears much slimmer than the number suggests. To me, this is the main thing that differentiates the 12 from the Tissot PRX, which feels much more simple and chunky. Similarly, the bracelet is also of higher quality than the PRX, and is naturally much lighter since it's titanium. Speaking of titanium, the material is something that we've only started seeing more of in integrated bracelet sports watches. Ones that I have experience with are the limited edition Lange Odysseus and Romain Gaultier Continuum, but both watches are magnitudes more expensive than the 12. The fact that Christopher Ward has managed to create such an amazing looking product in titanium at this price point is an achievement that should be celebrated. I also want to quickly touch on the resemblance of the 12 to the Czapek Antarctique. This is no coincidence, since the head of product design at Christopher Ward played a leading role in designing the Czapek. I've had hands-on time with multiple Antarctiques before, and I feel like ironically, the 12 has better build quality and is more solid. I also prefer the case and bezel design of the 12. I'm sure Czapek isn't too happy with the 12, but as a consumer, I'm very pleased it exists. Moving on, let's talk about wearability. As I alluded to earlier, the 12 is fantastic on the wrist, and feels much slimmer than it is since the bottom part just sinks in. I'd say it wears more like a 39mm than a 40mm, and definitely sits on the wrist better than a PRX. It's a watch that even females can get away with. However, if you're someone with a larger wrist, you might want to check out one in person before pulling the trigger. Because of how sleek the watch is, I imagine it will wear very strangely on those who have been working out their forearms. Finally, let's talk about the movement. Unlike the steel version, the titanium piece has a COSC chronometer certified Solita movement. Honestly, this could not mean much less to me, since I don't wear mechanical watches to track time down to the second, nor do I care about what the caseback looks like. It's good enough that you can even see the movement, when sport watches like Tudor's and the IWC Ingenieur have solid casebacks despite being much more expensive. I guess this is one of the areas where high horology pieces make their difference felt, but objectively speaking, the caseback on something like a Nautilus isn't even that special. As for competitors to the 12, the obvious one is the PRX. All I'll say is that the 12 is an objectively better watch, and whether you think the price difference is worth it probably depends largely on how much you have. Personally, I think it's absolutely worth the money, and I actually ordered the Astro Blue Titanium 12 on the day I saw my friend's purple piece. Having worn it for a few days, I can confidently say that I would pick this watch over many more expensive sports watches, like Tudor's, the Cartier Santos, IWC Ingenieur, and so on. To summarize, the Titanium 12 is easily one of the best watch releases of 2023. It's just such an all-round amazing package, to the extent where I for once don't really have anything negative to say about it. I guess maybe it would be nice if it was 1 or 2 millimeters larger in diameter, but it already wears fantastically well. Considering what you're getting at this price point, I think you'd be hard pushed to find a watch that is better value for money. If you enjoyed this video, check out my other watch reviews and video podcast series. Thank you for watching.